inshallah we'll be reciting from ayah number 196 of Surat Al-Baqra. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأتموا الحج والعمرة لله فإن أحصرتم فما استيسر من الهدي ولا تحلقوا رؤوسكم حتى يبلغ الهدي محله فمن كان منكم مريضا أو به أذى من رأسه ففدية من صيام أو صدقة أو نسك فإذا أمنتم فمن تمتع بالعمرة إلى الحج فما استيسر من الهدي فمن لم يجد فصيام 3 أيام في الحج و7 إذا رجعتم تلك 10 كاملة ذلك لمن لم يكن أهله حاضر المسجد الحرام واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله شديد العقاب صدق الله العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Last week we spoke about the ahkam of jihad. Again we are continuing the second half of Surat Al-Baqra, and the second half of Surat Al-Baqra has to do with different ahkam of deen. We already went through a few of them. For example, we went through the wasiyah, we went through qisas, we went through jihad, we went through taking people's wealth through wrongful means. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak about the ahkam of Umrah and also the ahkam of Hajj as well. So Allah ta'ala starts off ayah number 196 and says, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ, and complete the Hajj and complete the Umrah for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. Now first we have to understand that this ayah is not the ayah which makes Hajj fard. The ayah which makes Hajj fard is in Surah Al-Imran, which was revealed during the battle of Uhud in the 3rd year of Hijrah, where Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala said, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ, that for Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala upon the people is to make Hajj and pilgrimage of the Kaaba. So the ayah which makes Hajj fard is not this ayah, it is the ayah in Surah Al-Imran, which was revealed in the 3rd year of Hijrah. Now in that ayah, the ahkam and the ruling of Umrah was not mentioned. In that ayah we get to know that the Hajj is fard. So now what about the Umrah? What is the ruling when it comes to Umrah, which is known as Hajj Saghir? Now this ayah again does not speak about the fard or the sunnah or the wajib of the Hajj or Umrah, because the ayah says complete the Hajj and the Umrah, which is going back to the year of Hudaybiyah, which we will go into a second. So when it comes to the matter of Umrah, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik rahimahullah as well, they say that the Umrah is sunnah and it is not fard nor is it wajib. The reason for this, because of the hadith that comes in Tirmidhi, when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was asked, is the Umrah wajib? Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that it is not wajib, but rather it is praiseworthy and a person will get a lot of reward for performing the Umrah. So again, the ayah which makes Hajj falls in Surah Al-Imran, and when it comes to the ruling of Umrah it is sunnah and not wajib. And now this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, complete the Hajj and the Umrah for the sake of Allah. So this is going back to the background which we mentioned last time in the year of Hudaybiyah, when the Muslims, they wore their ihram and they were intending to perform the Umrah. And now when they put on their ihram and they went into the state of ihram, they were stopped and prevented from performing the Umrah by the Arabs of Mecca. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it is a must for you to complete the Umrah and perform Umratul Qada. And this ruling is when a person puts on his ihram for the Hajj or Umrah, and for any reason he is unable to complete it, then it will be wajib upon him to perform Umrah and Hajj at
another time the next year or whenever he is able to do so. And this is the ruling with any sunnah and nafal as well. If we start a 2 rakat nafal salah, and for some reason we break our nafal salah, for whatever reason it may be, now it is wajib for us to make up that nafal salah. So it started as something optional, but once you start the nafal salah and you do not complete it, it will become wajib for you to complete that nafal salah. Similarly, when it comes to fasting, right? Sometimes we make nafal fast. So for some reason, if we broke our nafal fast due to some valid excuse, it will be wajib for us to make up that nafal fast as well. So anything we start, whether it started as sunnah or nafal, if you do not complete it, it will become wajib for you to complete it as well. And that's what this ayah is referring to. Because the Muslims, they put on their ihram to perform their umrah, they were unable to do so. So now it becomes wajib for them to do umratul qada, and that is what this ayah is saying, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةِ, complete. In other words, they started their umrah because they put on the ihram. Right? Once you put on the ihram, this is the commencement of the act of umrah or hajj. But they were unable to perform their umrah, so this is why Allah Ta'ala said you must complete the hajj and the umrah for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. Again, this was in the year of Hudaybiyah, when the Muslims, they were restricted from performing their umrah. So then the following year, they had to perform their umrah, which became known as Umratul Qada, the Qada Umrah, which they were supposed to do last year, and now they are making Qada for it the next year. Now, we know that when a person puts on his ihram or goes into the state of ihram for Hajj or Umrah, and now he has to complete Hajj or Umrah. But what happens if for some reason he's unable to do so? Like what happened to the Muslims in the 7th year of Hijrah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains that and says, فَإِنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدِيِ, that if you have been restricted and prevented from performing the Umrah or the Hajj after wearing the Ihram for whatever reason, then you must sacrifice an animal. So for the Muslims, they were prevented from performing their Umrah because they were not being allowed to enter. So for that reason, they must sacrifice an animal, whatever is easy, either a goat, a sheep, or 1/7 of a cow or a camel. And also the scholars mention, if you have been prevented due to a sickness, or due to being stopped by someone, or in the airport after you put on the ihram, you were stopped for whatever reason, then you must do qurbani and you must sacrifice an animal, and then you can get out of the state of ihram. So again, anyone who enters the state of ihram and he is unable to perform his umrah or his hajj for any reason, then he must sacrifice an animal and he must take off his ihram, and then he will have to perform that umrah or hajj at a later time. So this is the ruling. Again, once a person wears the ihram or goes into the state of ihram, you are not allowed to leave and go out of the state of ihram unless you perform your umrah or your hajj. But again, for any reason, if you are unable to perform your umrah or your hajj after wearing the ihram, then the only way to come out of the ihram is performing and sacrificing an animal. And then you can come out of the ihram, and then you will have to do qada of your umrah, or if it was your hajj. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَحْرِقُوا رُؤُوسَكُمْ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْحَجُّ مَحِلَّهُ, and do not shave your head until the sacrificing animal reaches its place of sacrifice. In other words, when we are commanded to sacrifice an animal, that animal must be sacrificed within the limits of the haram. Whether we do it ourselves or we appoint someone, that sacrifice of the animal must be done in the haram. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you are not allowed to shave your heads until the animal reaches its place of sacrifice. So from this we come to know that the sign for removing the ihram is shaving the head. Once you shave the head, now you are allowed to leave your ihram and to get out of the state of ihram. So now from this we come to know that it is not permissible to cut any hair while you are in the ihram and performing the rites of umrah or hajj. You are not allowed to touch your hair or shave any hair from your body. But now the question comes, what if there is some type of sickness or some type of lice or difficulty that is making it difficult for our scalp, and now we are in need of shaving our heads. Now what happens? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا, whoever is sick, أَوْ بِهِ أَذًى مِنْ رَأْسِهِ, or has a problem with his scalp, maybe lice, or for any reason he has to shave his head, then he will have to give fidya. And what is that fidya? فَفِدْيَةٌ مِّن صِيَامٍ أَوْ صَدَقَةٍ أَوْ نُسُكٍ. He has three choices. Number one, he can fast. Number two, he can give sadaqah. Or number three, he can sacrifice an animal. So something similar happened to one of the Sahabas by the name of Ka'b ibn Ujra. He had a problem with his scalp. He had a lice problem, and he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, "What should I do?" So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "You can shave your head, but you must give fidya, one out of the three choices. Number one is sacrifice an animal, whether it may be a sheep, a goat, or 1/7 of a cow or a camel, and that animal must be again sacrificed within the limits of the haram. Number two, you must, if you cannot do that, then you must fast. And the hadith mentions to fast 3 days. And this 3 days can be fasted anytime. Doesn't necessarily have to be then, it can be later on to fast 3 days. The third choice you have is to give sadaqah. How much sadaqah? It is to give half a saw of wheat to 6 poor people. So saw is a measurement that the Arabs they used to use, and half a saw is equivalent to 1.632 kilograms of wheat. So a person must give 1.632 kilograms of wheat to one poor person, or give his cash value. So in total, a person must give to 6 poor people a total of 3 saw, half a saw to every single of the 6 poor people. And again, that is equivalent to 1.63 kilograms of wheat, or its cash equivalent to every single of the 6 poor people. So these 3 choices a person has if it becomes necessary for him to shave his hair while he is wearing the ihram. Otherwise, it is not permissible for anyone to touch their hair while they are in the ihram, whether it may be the hair on their head, the hair on their private parts, the hair on their face, whatever it may be. It is not permitted for a person to touch their hair. And if it becomes necessary, then he must give these 3 forms of fidya. Moving along, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then mentions, فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ. Now when you become safe, in other words, it is permissible for you to perform your umrah, there is no problem, and you are able to go and perform your umrah or hajj. فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعَ بِالْعُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدْيِ. That the one who performs the umrah and the hajj together, then they must sacrifice an animal as well. So now let's backtrack. So in the time of Jahiliyyah, in the early days of ignorance, the people said that it is impermissible for a person to perform umrah and hajj in the days of hajj. So the days of hajj coming up is from Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So the people of Jahiliyyah, they said, in these 2 months and 10 days, it is not permissible for one to perform the umrah. You can only perform the hajj. But we know that many a times if we went to hajj, first we perform the umrah and then we perform the hajj. So in this ayah, we have to understand that there are 3 types of hajj. Number 1 is known as Hajj Ifrad. And Hajj Ifrad is that when a person goes and only performs hajj, he does not perform umrah. So he goes in the time and the days of hajj, and then he wears his ihram from the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, and he performs his hajj without any umrah. That is the first type. The second type is Hajj Qiran. And this is when a person wears his ihram and he performs the umrah and hajj with the same ihram. In other words, he comes to Mecca in the days or the months of hajj. He wears his ihram from the miqat, and now he performs his umrah. And now he stays in that ihram until the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, and he performs the hajj with the same ihram. This is known as Hajj Qiran. The third type of hajj, which is the one that many of us, if not all of us, we do, is known as Hajj Tamattu. And Hajj Tamattu is when a person, they go to Mecca and they enter into ihram before the miqat and they perform umrah. Maybe they perform umrah in the first day of Dhul Hijjah, or the last days of Dhul Qa'dah, they perform Umrah before the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, before the days of Hajj. So now they perform their Umrah and they take off their Ihram. And now they are living in Mecca and they can do whatever they want. And then when the 8th of Dhul Hijjah comes, the time when it is, now you must go to Mina. Now you wear your Ihram again from the Haram and you perform your Hajj. So this is known as Hajj Tamattu, where a person performs Umrah and also performs Hajj at the same time, but with two different Ihrams. So he comes to Mecca, he wears his Ihram from the Miqat, he performs the Umrah, and when he's done with the Umrah, he takes off his Ihram, and now he stays in Mecca, and now when it is time for him to go to Mina, the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, he wears a new Ihram, and then he goes and performs his Hajj. So this person, he did Umrah and Hajj at the same time. So for this person, he must sacrifice an animal. And this is known as Dam Shukr, the Dam of Shukr, to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him the ability to perform Umrah and Hajj at the same time. So for this person, he must sacrifice two animals. Number one is the Qurbani, which is not related to the Hajj. Every single Muslim who possesses the amount of nisab, he must perform his Qurbani. That is not even related to the Hajj, that everyone must do. But for the Haji, the one who is performing Umrah and Hajj at the same time, he must also sacrifice another animal, and that animal must be sacrificed within the limits of the Haram, and this is known as Dam of Shukr, the Dam of Shukr, that he is sacrificing an animal to show his gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, that he was able to perform two pilgrimage in the same journey. The pilgrimage of Umrah and the pilgrimage of Hajj as well. This person must sacrifice another animal along with the Qurbani animal that he must sacrifice as well. So this is the three types of Hajj, and the more famous one, like we mentioned, is Hajj Tamattu. So we must understand that for this we must sacrifice two animals. One is Dam Shukr in the vicinity of the Haram, and the second one is the Qurbani, whether you want to do it yourself in the Haram or in your own localities, in your own countries. That is separate from the Hajj. So I hope we all understand that section as well. And now, what happens if the one who does Umrah and Hajj, he is unable to sacrifice an animal due to his financial state? So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ, the one who is unable to do his Dam of Shukr within the vicinity of the Haram, then he must fast for 3 days in the days of Hajj, and he must fast 7 days when he returns back to his home. تِلْكَ عَشَرَةٌ كَامِلَةٌ, a total of 10 days. In other words, when we go for the Hajj, and first we perform our Umrah, then we go out of Ihram and we wait for the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, and now we wear our Ihram from the Haram, and then we go to perform our Hajj and we go to Mina. If we were unable and we knew that we cannot afford to sacrifice an animal, then we must fast for 3 days, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th. So if I finish my Umrah, let's say on the 5th, I came to Mecca on the 3rd of Dhul Hijjah, and then I finished my Umrah, and now I finished and I got out of Ihram on the same day, or the 4th of Dhul Hijjah. Now I must fast the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th. I must fast these days, and then I must fast 7 days when I come back home, completing 10 days. Again, this is for the one who cannot afford to do the Dam of Shukr. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ أَهْلُهُ حَاضِرِ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. This is only for the one who does not live within the miqat and the vicinity and the limits of the Haram. So again, we mentioned that in the time of Jahiliyyah, the people, they said that you are not allowed to perform Umrah and Hajj in the days of Hajj, which is from Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So that ruling is only for the one who lives within the limits of the Haram. So if a person, he lives in the miqat area, he does not live outside the Haram, and he wants to perform the Hajj, then it will not be permissible for him to do Umrah. He can only do the Hajj. But for the ones who are coming from outside the Haram, from wherever they may come, from USA, from the UK, from Pakistan, Bangladesh, wherever they are coming from, they are allowed to perform Umrah and Hajj at the same time. Why? because it is not easy for them to come again and perform the Umrah. So that way Allah Ta'ala allowed them to perform the Hajj and Umrah at the same time. But those people who are already living there, they can perform their Umrah anytime. It is very easy. They are only miles away from the Kaaba and from the Baytullah. So for them, they can only perform the Hajj in the days of Hajj. But for everyone else, the Afaqis, the foreigners, they are allowed to perform Umrah and Hajj at the same time, yani in the days of Hajj, which is what most of us do. We go about a week or 2 weeks early to performing the Hajj. So first we perform the Umrah, then we leave our Ihram, then we stay in Mecca or Medina or wherever we have to be. We come back to the Haram on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah and we perform our Hajj. This is what most of us do. So for us it is allowed to perform the Umrah, and we should do so we can take full advantage and take full reward. And we must sacrifice the animal if we are doing both. So this is an outline of the types of Hajj. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ, and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is severe in punishment. Now what is the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning this ayah? It is very important. Many of us, before we go to perform our Umrah or before we go to the Hajj, we do not do our due diligence in searching to see how to perform the Umrah or the Hajj the proper way. Many of us, we go towards the pilgrimage without any knowledge. What is the proper way of performing the Umrah? What is the proper way of performing the Hajj? We have to do our research before we go. Because Allah Ta'ala says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, fear Allah Ta'ala. Yani fear Allah Ta'ala when it comes to the commandments of Umrah and Hajj. Make sure you know to do it the right way, because Allah Ta'ala is severe in punishment. That it is the right that we have to learn before we go. And many a times we do not know. We do not know what we are doing. And now we just go. So Allah Ta'ala is reminding us that you must learn before you go. It is not that difficult. Take a course, read something, sit with someone. You must learn the ahkam of Umrah and Hajj before you go. Otherwise there will be a problem. And sometimes we know the rulings. Again, sometimes we know the rulings of Umrah and Hajj, but we do not follow it. Maybe because we have a bad guide, or because our fellow Hujjaj, they are telling us to do something else. So again, it is very important that we educate ourselves when it comes to the ruling of Hajj and Umrah before we go. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to want to mention 8 ayat. This was the first of the 8, the long ayah. Again, a recap of this ayah quickly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that it is that you must complete your Hajj and Umrah for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. In other words, if you start anything and for some reason you are unable to finish, you must complete that later on. And then if you are stopped from performing your Hajj or Umrah after you wore the Ihram, then you must sacrifice an animal, take off your Ihram, and perform your Umrah or Hajj whenever you can in the following years. And you are not allowed to shave any part of your hair, of your body, unless you have a valid reason. Then you must give fidyah, either fasting, giving a sacrifice, or giving charity. And then when it comes to the one who is doing Hajj Tamattu, doing Hajj or Umrah at the same time, he must sacrifice an additional animal, which is known as the Dam of Shukr, and that must be done within the vicinity of the Haram. For the one who cannot sacrifice, then he must fast 3 days, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, and 7 days when he goes back home. And this is only for the foreigners. And those who live in the miqat, they must only perform the Hajj and they cannot perform the Umrah. The next ayah, ayah number 198, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-Hajju ashhurun ma'lumat, that the Hajj has known days and months. Unlike the Umrah can be performed any day of the year, any time of the year. But when it comes to the Hajj, there are specific days and specific times. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-Hajju ashhurun ma'lumat. The Hajj has some ma'lumat days, has some known days, recognized days. You cannot perform the Hajj whenever you want, unlike the Umrah. And what are the days and the months of Hajj? The days and the months of Hajj start from Shawwal, the entire Shawwal, the entire Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. These are the months and the days of Hajj. In other words, if a person wears Ihram before the month of Shawwal, if he wears his ihram for Hajj, then his Hajj will not be complete. The only time we can wear our ihram for Hajj is from Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah or Dhul Hijjah. We can wear our ihram from that time and then perform the Hajj. And of course, many of us were not going to wear the ihram in Shawwal, then we will have to be in the state of ihram for 2 months. Many of us will wear our ihram 7th or the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. But again, this ayah is trying to say that the days of Hajj are known. You cannot perform the Hajj anytime you want, and it must be done within these 2 months and 10 days, and obviously preferably closer to the days of Hajj. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. That the one who intends to perform Hajj, فَلَا رَفَث, there is no obscenity, وَلَا فُسُوق, there is no sins, وَلَا جِدَال, and there is no fighting and arguing and quarreling in Hajj. So now before a person goes for the Hajj or even the Umrah, because Umrah is known as Hajj Saghir. The actual Hajj, which is what we know in the days of Dhul Hijjah, this is known as Hajj Akbar, the big Hajj. And Umrah is known as Hajj Asghar, the small Hajj, the small pilgrimage. So these rules not only apply for Hajj Akbar, but they also apply for Hajj Asghar, which is known as Umrah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when you intend to perform your Hajj, whether it may be Umrah or the actual Hajj, then there is no obscenity, there is no sin, and there is no quarreling or fighting either. So what does it mean there is no obscenity? The scholars, they mentioned that the word rafath means there is no marital intercourse. That when you go for Hajj or Umrah and you are wearing your ihram, it is haram and prohibited for a person to have intercourse with one's wife. Number 2, wala fusuq. There is no sin. You are not allowed to commit sin in the times of Hajj. Well, we know we cannot commit sin any time of the year. So what is this ayah referring to? Many of the scholars, they are referring to those sins which is halal throughout the year, but not when a person performs not when the person wears the ihram. So in this ayah, when Allah Ta'ala says do not sin, it is referring to those things which are halal outside the ihram but haram inside the ihram. For example, when a person wears the ihram, he is not allowed to shave his hair. A person, he is not allowed to wear perfume. A person, he is not allowed to hunt. A person, he is not allowed to clip or cut his nails. A person, he is not allowed to cover his face or his head. So these are what is referring to, that do not commit sin. We are not allowed to commit sin throughout the year, any time of the year. But when we are wearing the ihram, preferably we are not allowed to commit the sins which are haram in the ihram. Like nails or hunting or perfume or covering the face or the hair. Even the women, they are not allowed to cover their face even if they wear niqab. Similarly, the men, if they want to be more pious and wear a kufi, they are not allowed to. You must not cover your head when you are wearing your ihram as well. And these are some of the rulings which we are already aware of. So that's number 2. Number 3, there is no quarreling and fighting and arguing in Hajj. That you are not allowed to quarrel and fight anywhere, but especially when it comes to the time of Hajj and Umrah, you are supposed to stay away from this. And looking at these three things, this shows the eloquency of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose these 3 words for a particular purpose. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that there is no marital intercourse or any talks of open love? This is haram. You cannot have intercourse or talk about intercourse while you're in your ihram. The reason for this is because when a person is performing Hajj or Umrah, he stays away from his wife for a certain period of time. He's away from his wife. Number 2, there are thousands of people, and the men and the women, they are mixed. So a person's gaze can fall on the opposite gender. And now when a person, a combination of staying away from his wife and a combination of mixing with thousands of people, the inner desire can come out in him to perform something which is not permissible. So for this reason, Allah Ta'ala says, specifically, do not engage in intercourse or do not engage in open talks of love, because while a person is in Hajj and Umrah, while he is away from his wife and he is mixing with thousands of people, his shahawat may tell him to do something wrong. So that's why Allah Ta'ala specifically mentions, do not perform the intercourse. Number 2, do not commit sin. Although intercourse is included in sin, Allah Ta'ala especially and specified the intercourse separately to show the importance to stay away from it, because if a person indulges in intercourse before the Arafah, then his whole Hajj is invalid and he will have to perform the Hajj all over again. And then sometimes a person, while he is in Hajj or Umrah, sometimes a person would like to perform sins, for example, theft and robbery or pickpocketing. This is something which we see common. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, stay away from the sins. Number 3, Allah ta'ala chose stay away from quarreling and arguing. Because what happens is in the Hajj and the Umrah, we are in a small space and it is very crowded. There are millions and thousands of people in the Hajj and the Umrah. So a person, tends to start arguing. If a person bumps him a little bit, or if a person cuts him off, gets in front of him, because we are in a very small place and there are thousands, or in the times of Hajj, millions of people, we may tend to quarrel and argue. So this is why the eloquent speech of Allah Ta'ala, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala chose these 3 things specifically. Stay away from the intercourse, stay away from open talks of love, or even having the thought of these evil things. Stay away from sin, all those things which are haram, outside of ihram and inside of ihram. Stay away from that. Stay away from quarreling and arguing the least bit in Hajj, yani Hajj Asghar and Hajj Akbar, in Hajj and Umrah as well. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ. And whatever good you do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of it. Yani, it is not enough to only stay away from these 3 things, but rather a person must do the most he can in these days of Hajj and Umrah. The most you can, the most dhikr, the most Quran recitation, the most remembrance of Allah Ta'ala you can do it. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ. Whatever good you do, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows of it. Because what happens is Hajj for most of us is a one-time in a life experience. And for most of us, Umrah is only once or twice time experience in our entire life. So whatever we can, take advantage of this and perform the dhikr and always being in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. Simply going through the rites of Hajj and Umrah, simply staying away from sins and arguing and intercourse is not enough. As much as your ibadah and dhikr you can do in these days, do it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you as well. وَتَزَوَّدُوا. And take provision. Yani before you go to perform Umrah and Hajj, have your provisions and have your belongings, and that you can perform your Hajj and Umrah easily. Not that you are going with no money and with no sustenance, and now you're going to be asking and begging people over there. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. The best provision is not to ask the people. In other words, before you go for your Umrah and Hajj, make sure you have your belongings and make sure you can perform the Hajj and Umrah and you have your provision and your sustenance so that you do not need to ask the people. وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. And fear me, O people of intellect. So this was the second out of the 8 ayat. Again, this second ayah was mentioning that Hajj has certain days. You cannot perform Hajj whenever you want. Stay away from those 3 things. Why those 3 things? Because these are the things which tend to happen when a person is performing his Hajj or Umrah. And staying away from these 3 things is not enough. Rather, a person must also do as much as ibadah and dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as he can. We'll take the next 2 ayat before we come to an end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the next ayah, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. That there is no sin upon you if you seek from the bounty of your Lord. Now what does this mean? There is no sin upon you if you seek the bounty of your Lord. Now we have to see the background of the story. So in the time of Jahiliyyah, in the time of ignorance, what the Arabs of Jahiliyyah they used to do is that when the people they would gather in the plains of Mina, where the people there in Mina for 2 to 3 days, the people they would open and set and they would perform, and they would have bazaars over there. They would set up tents and they would set up forms of trading and business, and they would perform bazaars and they would set up tents and they would have different types of stores over there. So instead of the ibadah of Allah Ta'ala, they took this as a means of gaining some money and a means of some trade and business. So when the companions, they came and they saw this was going on, what happened was they abolished all of this. That there was no more bazaars anymore. There was no more, tents where you can trade and do your business over there. It became solely the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because again, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Stay away from all types of transactions, perform your dhikr and your ibadah. But what happened was, one sahabi, one man, asked another companion that, I have a business of renting the camels for the people. This is my business. So what I do is I rent out my camels to the people, they pay me, and we go together to perform the Hajj. Am I sinful for this? Because they knew in the time of Jahiliyyah, the people they used to set up bazaars and places to trade, so maybe they felt that every single source of income would be haram. So then they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he stayed quiet until this ayah was revealed. So the answer is, if a person does something to make a little bit, then this is not haram. For example, renting out your camel. But if the intention is to go to only make money, then this is undoubtedly haram. So for example, if some of us, we go perform the Hajj or Umrah, and for some reason our funds become short, and now we trade something or we buy or sell something, this is no problem. You're allowed to do this. Because Allah Ta'ala says, there is no sin to seek from the bounty of Allah. And at the end of the day, it comes to intention. That if we go with the intention of trading and business and making some money, then definitely this is haram. But if we go and we had a business of renting out camels and we take some money for that, there's no problem. But Allah Ta'ala says that لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ, there is no sin upon you, indicating to the fact that the best thing to do is stay away from trading and business completely. As much as possible, try not to even take $1 of income, solely focus on the ibadah and the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِذَا أَفَضْتُم مِّنْ عَرَفَاتٍ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ عِنْدَ الْمَشْعَرِ الْحَرَامِ. When you come down from the Mount of Arafah, then remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala near Mash'ar al-Haram. What does this mean? So now we know this ayah makes it wajib that after a person stays in the field of Arafah and the plain of Arafah, he must do wukuf and stay overnight in the field of Muzdalifah. This is what this ayah is referring to. That when you come down and you finish your stay in Arafah, then you must spend the night near Mash'ar al-Haram. Now what is Arafah? Arafah is a plain which is in the outskirts or outside the vicinity and outside the limit of the Haram. This was Arafah. Mash'ar al-Haram means the sacred sign, right? Haram means sacred, Mash'ar means a sign. So this was a mountain which was a monumental of Islam, which was right next to the plain of Muzdalifah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that once you finish Arafah, and we know when is Arafah? Arafah is on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, after a person performed Dhuhr and Asr together in the time of Dhuhr, then after sunset, a person makes his way to Muzdalifah. And a person will perform his Maghrib and Isha together at the time of Isha in Muzdalifah and spend the night. The night of Dhul Hijjah will be spent in Muzdalifah, and then in the morning a person will go to Mina and do the Jamratul Aqaba. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that when you come from Arafah, go to Muzdalifah, spend the night in Muzdalifah. So as a result of this, we come to know that spending night in Muzdalifah is wajib. And Arafah is fard. So what is the difference? If a person misses Arafah, in other words, he arrived late. For example, he came after sunset on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah and he missed Arafah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Al-Hajju Arafah. That Hajj is Arafah. The essence of Hajj is Arafah. If you miss your wukuf in Arafah, then you miss your Hajj and you must perform Hajj again and your Hajj will not be valid. This is the importance of Arafah. If you miss Muzdalifah, then you miss a wajib, and in order for this, your Hajj is not invalid, but you must give a dam for leaving out wukuf Arafah. So from this we come to know that to stay in Arafah is fard, to stay in Muzdalifah is wajib. Again, this is done on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. That a person, after spending the night on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah in Mina, after the Fajr on the night of Mina, they will come from Mina and they will go to Arafah. Now in Arafah they will perform Dhuhr and Asr together in the time of Dhuhr. These are the only two times where a person is allowed to combine two salah at the same time, according to the Hanafi madhab, is in the days of Hajj. And again, this must be done behind the Imam of the Hajj. If we miss the Imam and we miss the Jama'ah, then we will have to perform Dhuhr at its time and perform Asr at its time. So the Dhuhr and the Asr must be done together at the time of Dhuhr behind the Imam, which is appointed by the government for that year. Now, once we spend the day in Arafah and now it is sunset, the time of Maghrib, we will make our way over to Muzdalifah. And here in Muzdalifah, we will pray the Maghrib and the Isha Salah together in the time of Isha. And these are the only two times again where you can combine two Salah at the same time according to the Hanafi madhab. And then we spend the night in Muzdalifah. And over here Allah Ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرُوهُ. Remember Allah Ta'ala because He guided you. Yani when we stay in Muzdalifah, this is the time of dhikr and dua and abundant dhikr of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. وَإِن كُنْتُم مِّن قَبْلِهِ لَمِنَ الضَّالِينَ. And before this you were astray and Allah Ta'ala guided you. So to show shukr to Allah Ta'ala, remember Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala abundantly. So again from this ayah we get to know that wukuf in Muzdalifah is wajib. If a person misses the wukuf of Muzdalifah, then he will have to give dam. If a person misses Arafah, then he missed the entire Arafah. There is no dam. A person must repeat his Hajj at a later date. And we will stop here. These were the first 3 ayat of the ahkam of Umrah and Hajj. And the next 5 will complete. So may Allah Ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and the ability to act upon what has been said. Inshallah, next time we will go over a review of these ayat as well and complete the full ahkam of Hajj and Umrah in the coming week. So may Allah Ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and the ability to act upon what has been said. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullah.